This is a Star Wars inspired attack ship. Inspired by classic Doug Chang designs, real-world aircraft such as the Supermarine Spitfire and Sikorsky Sea King, and somehow even a Dragonfly. In this video I'll take you through the naive and hopeful early build phase, the abomination of whatever the hell this is, and into the design resolution phase where everything comes together. And by the end we'll look at how to unwrap and texture your designs in the most effective way I know. Welcome to Technical. My name is Rasmus. I'm an art director and designer with 20 years of professional games development experience, and I'm on a mission to inspire and empower designers, makers, and creators. Design the future. Let's go. All right, so I don't have to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. So here we are in Blender. And I know I'm going to do a fighter attack craft, something not capital class. So I pulled in a little cockpit and some body shapes here from my prototype Model Shop Greebles asset pack. And you can see I'm experimenting with some camera views down there in the left hand corner where you can see what I'm doing. Unfortunately, I'm recording this in 2K and not 4K, so sincerest apologies for that. And then the middle view here where you can get a little bit of a calmer experience rather than all that jittery, flickery camera whipping, which I don't think is very pleasing. So let me know if you have any type of format that you prefer. I'm happy to oblige. So putting in these cockpits into a body shape, and then I'm starting to assemble some shapes on the sides that that can feel like a, let's say, not a wing, but the part of the body that would attach to big engines. And I have these cowls that I use quite a lot in the pack, and they form a nice shape outside these rounded jet engine type shapes that I think are quite fun to play with. They're sort of hinting at atmospheric capabilities, if you do something that feels Star Warsy, or where you aim to have it feel Star Warsy, you are quite free to do both atmospheric and spaceborne, and you don't really have to explain it unless you are a writer for Wikipedia, obviously. You can see here I'm pretty quick. I'm getting a shape that I find quite pleasing. I think is quite cool, and yeah, I would say surprisingly so. It's landing at a place that I think is appealing quite quickly. And the funny thing is, if you're familiar with my stuff, you can recognize some of these shapes, and what's happening is I'm simply tapping into some of these habits that I'm sure a lot of you artists have, where you find yourself, or you almost discover yourself, like you witness yourself doing the same thing again. Classic tendencies that we all have, that when we switch off our dare I say thinking brain, then the same patterns tend to repeat themselves, for better or worse. Because a big part of this for me is zen and relaxation and having a good time, simply going with the flow, stuff like that. And so with that in mind, oftentimes I fall into the same patterns. Commenters guessing on the ship that it looks or used to look like just before get points. I don't know, some sort of points. So what I'm trying to do here is break that pattern. I'm saying to myself, no, Rasmus, come on, you can do better than that. And so I'm throwing out some shapes here, really trying to push the composition and outline of the design. And mind you, I'm not saying that this is good. I'm not, but it's part of the process, right? Relax. And I kind of like that nose there. I think that cowl that I used for the nose has a interesting gap in it, and I can put some techno greebles in there and make it feel capable and usable, although it also looks a little bit goofy. That can work sometimes. B1, I'm looking at you. And here I'm playing with the notion of an extended cockpit. I like this idea of having, almost like a B-17 flavor, where you can imagine a crew and shenanigans and arguments and whatnot across the tiny hallway there, and problems. And so a lot of the times I like these ships that have a sizable, let's say a 3, 4, 5 person crew to give that inkling of that an adventure in this ship would be fun. I think that's something my mind, draws me to do quite often. And here, I don't know what's happening here. This is ridiculous. So I'm struggling a bit, and I'm actually surprised that not more of you comment in the comment section. Like, why aren't you sketching properly, you dumb? Certainly could, and I think maybe I could switch off or like, let's say, reach a different part of the brain in that type of process, and then see what happens. Maybe that would be fun. Do a little sketchbook experiment. We could do that at some point. But I'm committing to this. I'm committing to the 3D, and of course, we've discussed before that putting in an HDRI here to light the model. We've discussed before that moving things around in 3D and then simply rotating the camera around is insanely important when you do designs like this. Of course, they're going to be, I'm imagining that they will be experienced in video sequences or a big screen somewhere. And with that in mind, movement and how the ship's shapes reveal themselves as it passes the camera is hugely important. So, for instance, you get a front view, and then as it passes and becomes profile, the shapes reveal themselves. And that experience is key to a design, if it feels exciting or not. And what the hell am I doing right there? What am I thinking? What's going on? I don't know what. No comment. But anyway, so I'm constantly arguing for the fact that actually modeling and kitbashing in 3D, for instance, this, where it's just floating shapes. And what I can do is rotate around and get a sense of how those shapes relate to each other. And I can't do that in sketch form. That means that would certainly take a longer time. And you can see I'm choosing this body here, and I'm tilting it just to check how it feels if it were to do maneuvers. Because of course the classic aspect of a design like this, where width is key, is that when it sort of whips around the camera, it's going to look super dynamic. And I'm playing with this catamaran shape, so retaining these little shapes that look like intakes out into the wings, out into the engines on either side, far side of the ship. And then I'm having this strange tail, and it, I often come back to this World War II type aesthetic where, de Havilland Mosquito, or maybe the P-38 Lightning. Which one is it? These dual hull fighter bombers and night fighter and whatnot. They live inside me, man. They want to get out. I can't help it. And so I tend to come back to that. And this is certainly a different design. It maybe looks like a light bomber or something, or some sort of a support ship. And I'm struggling, and I'm reminded, by the classic design of the B-wing, and I'm saying to myself, Rasmus, why don't you push the dynamism of this design a little bit more? Why do you always do these World War II fighters, you silly goof? Try something new. And so I'm playing with a B-wing inspired design here, where I'm adding this gun pod type thing. Instead of having two hulls that are similar, this hull is now a complete weapon bay or weapon hull that'll then contrast and complement the passenger and pilot's compartment. And you can see I'm struggling back and forth. I mean, okay, fine, cool. It's really moving quickly. I can really play around here, and we're just not that far in. This is like half an hour or something. Of course, it's sped up. Not even an hour, 45 minutes maybe. And I'm noodling around. As I like to do on this channel, I like to critique myself and my own process. So you can understand that there are pros and cons. Well, there's always a con for each choice you make, right? So in that sense, the con of this choice is scatterbrained, chaotic nonsense that sort of happens as I play around. The upside is you can quite quickly validate if you like it or not, because again, as we mentioned before, the shapes and the interplay between the volumes as you rotate the camera will make you decide whether you like it or not quite quickly. Here there's something, actually this also speaks a little bit to an older design that I also have a video on, like a dropship design, where I'm playing with this type of a tall central body that opens up into a wide middle, and it looks almost like a brutal version of a Nubian ship, or a Sikorsky helicopter, sort of a mix between the two, where the layout feels Doug Changy and the brutal nature feels more realistic, or maybe more old trilogy, if we're talking Star Wars. So there's all these notions and flavors that are going on at the same time, from credibility to, Sikorsky credibility, like usable objects, rescue helicopters and whatnot, to more fantastical layouts, where obviously Doug Chang's designs are inspired by, both everything from hot rods to Flash Gordon to all these things that, working with Lucas, the task was to make something that referenced these different eras and these different influences of George in particular, but of course translated through the mind of Doug Chang. And so now all these designs live in me, and you, and we can sort of reference back on that. And I think what my designs tend to bring is, here, what's happening here is that now it's getting, notice the cockpit there. I'm back to this Second World War flavor, where it's almost like a Spitfire. You can see if that little nose cone there was the propeller, and then this body, or it feels like a Mustang, or actually it feels like a submarine Spitfire, yeah. Maybe even the first one, the seaplane, if you remember that, really cool. So I'm coming back to these shapes where, there's also some designs in the art books that have that body, where it clearly references back to some of those 1930s Cup trophy racing planes, submarines and whatnot. And so I do it too, I would say. And as I mentioned earlier in this chat as well, for me, World War II quite often is where I get my instinctual references from. So, of course, Doug Chang riffing on Lucas and McQuarrie, and others, the other greats, and then me riffing on their work, as well as my own bank of aircraft. Do I have my aircraft books here? No, can't reach them. Cutaway books and all these books I used to read as a kid. I'm sure a lot of you would agree that you've done the same thing. And so we've been influenced by all these things, and yeah, of course, naturally so. So I'm pretty happy with the core shape of this. I'm pretty happy with that body. I'm very well aware that this particular design feels like a mix of two designs I've done in the past. I'm fine with that. It doesn't have to be the newest of the new, and I'm fine having let's say a shape that I riff on to a certain extent. I don't mind that there's a lineage, and I don't mind that there's that some of the habits are allowed to survive, if you will, as long as it's not blatant rebuff of itself. You can decide whether or not that's the case. Here I decide that I want to spend a little more time blending the bodies, because it feels a little bit too clunky, and I'm wondering if we can do something aerodynamic. And I was gonna do like a dome shape on the other axis actually, and then instead I chose this one, and I'm like, hey, what about if we take these Slave 1 type shapes and place them on the sides to allude to some sort of movement within the from the main body and to the engine bays there. And so I'm just roughing in these shapes to give a really rough idea that there might be some hinge work happening. And if you saw the earlier video, with the tank, where I discussed the notion of having things that feel vaguely mechanically sound without actually being it, that's totally the same here. Where because I make a shape, a clunky shape like this that looks mechanical, it looks like it's engineered out of necessity. Jesus. And not particularly elegant. It screams use. It screams like it has a purpose, because otherwise it would look gorgeous. So it's almost like taking these brutal mechanical shapes to infer use and to infer importance. Where if they're allowed, the parts are allowed to look as clunky as that. It's because they have a use case and not an aesthetic purpose, for sure. I figured these winglets were a little too typical for me, and I had some feet, sled type skids that are also super typical for me. So yeah, man, greatest hits, I suppose. It's funny, as I'm trying to bend the habits of mine, you can see I'm squeezing some parts together to give that inkling of mechanical sound design. As I'm fighting to not just fall into the same old habits, I'm falling into the same old habits. You know, I suppose you could say that working with this pack here makes this more natural in the sense that the parts are the parts. But that said, you can certainly do different types of layouts with these components, right? You can certainly do all kinds of ships, and I think there's room for a little bit more testing on that subject, you know, on the channel where you know, maybe you can suggest some stuff for me in the chat or something, and I can try and push for some designs that are a little further. I certainly haven't done hinges like this that feel Slave 1E, and I'm really happy with that. I think that's really fun, because at the same time, two things at once. One thing is it's quite familiar, and it's quite what do you say, homage, ripoff? What's the word? And on the other hand, it is done in a design that feels a little bit different, right? So it is both a combination of flavors that feel super well known and quite fresh at the same time. At least that's the ambition here. Need some pipe work. Need some pipe work on the inner sides of these semi-exposed engine bays here, engine pods, where let's say the external side feels a little bit more considered, the inner side feels a little bit more exposed and naked. So it's clear that there's a difference on the exterior and on the interior, even though from the sheath point of view, it's the same shape. So I just use this chaos here of the pipework to infer a bit more customization and a bit more maybe vulnerability here on the inside. And I think that works quite well. So where the outer side is more vents and whatnot, mostly. I add some pipes, I know, relax. It's mostly vents. The inner side feels like it would be more prone to damage if hit. So I think that gives it a little bit of a exterior armor and then inner, you know, vulnerability. So we're just adjusting the volumes. You can see I'm frantically rotating the camera back and forth. Just playing with some lighting here. And again, I'm like, was that really what it was? Shape-wise? You can tease me. This is stupid, but that's what happened. And I decide simply that I can't live with, see, there it is again, the locomotive or B-17 cockpit. So awesome. I love that brutal shape. I have to test a few more windows out because I'm like, it's not really, it's too one-to-one, it's too simple. And so for this one, I take this somewhat Falcon-inspired cockpit that we all familiar with. I have made sort of a wide version to make it feel a little bit different. And I placed that in here, like almost like the insect eyes, like almost like a dragonfly or something. And I feel like now I'm surprising myself again. So rather than simply doing something that feels like a Spitfire, now I'm like, now I don't even know what it is. What is that? So the layout and the nose, the strength in that nose that it has, leans into this cockpit that feels familiar, of course, because it has sort of a Falcon-esque shape language, but in a layout that you haven't seen before. The same theme that I'm talking about quite a bit, which is feels familiar, but it's removed enough that you can experience it as a new thing at the same time. Here I'm placing something that could be a heat shield maybe for these vents, like an F4 Phantom or something. That doesn't really have that shape, but that's the idea. And then inside that little hole there, I just place some pipes and tubes to just land it. and then some retexturing, and you can see here how I'm selecting these bands of polys, and I'm just moving it around on the trim sheet up there. The trim sheet is quite detailed, so it can be a little bit difficult sometimes to get some calm in it. But I mean, you could make your own calmer trim sheet as well with fewer panel lines. And of course, this is quite a busy aesthetic, so that's all right. I have versions as well where the contrast on each panel in the texture is lower, so it's cleaner and calmer and newer. It feels newer. That can work certainly, but this is a good way to illustrate to you guys how easy it is to work with these trim sheets. And I view the objects from above normally, and then I cylindrical map it, and then the cylindrical mapping wraps the object like this. That means if you have a shape that I can't quite comprehend, like all these cowls and stuff are quite complicated, I just top view them, cylindrical map them, and then the map wraps itself around. And then I can stretch and warp and bend over on the trim sheet afterwards, quite easy. At least for a first go, right? You can get quite far with these types of adjustments, and you can see even these rounded shapes and whatnot have been done in a very similar way. And it's a really, really quick way to get really far. And if you want to, you can go in and become specific and all that. But as you all know, I'm less interested in finishing, finalization, and I'm more interested in sketching and doing the design, if you will. Here I'm leaving this pretty rough because for this purpose here tonight, we don't need to be super precise about it. So I decided to go in and choose all these armored cowly shapes and give them some of that classic Star Warsian burgundy red color. And again, you can see I told you the process, told you the mapping. You can see how easy it is to stretch some of these wear and tear around the edges. Super easy peasy. Actually quite fun. It's quite fast and quite forgiving. So if you know a few of those simple tricks, cylindrical unwrap, have a trim sheet, rotate it around, left 90 degrees around, you can just move it around and experience how it reads in the 3D viewport. Then you can just texture your heart out, and it's a good time. Probably that's why I'm still enjoying working with this, because it's so much fun. You can see here, super complicated shape, and I'm just hacking it, and then as I unwrap it, I can even either take these parts and flip them back and forth, mirror them, so that the texture just gets mirrored across the surface. Very easy. It's cheating, but hey, that's what we do. There we go. There it is. Yeah, so what a complex and intricate journey this particular design was. I got astray there in the middle, and I don't know, that was bad. But, as usual, keeping at it, trying to land something that is usable. This was quite quick as well, so what normally takes quite a week or whatever, took an evening plus a few hours. Stay the course. You never know where you're going to end up. And I hope you got something from that little texturing tips and tricks there. It helps me enormously, and I would advise you to just get in there with your trim sheet and get your hands dirty. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see me mess around with iteration some more, and in particular the ship that this has something in common with, you can check out this video here. See you around.